All right, it's 10 past. I'm just going to start with it. Uh, I don't care what those other bitches are doing. All right. So, yeah. Let's go. Oh, I should share my screen again so that y'all can see my beautiful blackboard, whiteboard better. There we go. Okay, you should be able to see that. If you don't, just tell me, alright? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. So last time we saw these three sections of Rome, the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of Rome. I'm going to build further on that. I'm going to more into detail, as today is going about the Roman legal system. Well, the legal system. You heard the word legal refers to the word law. So this is all about legislation. That is why we're actually seeing this. It's a basic. It's really a basic part of your law course. So let's start. How does the legislative branch create laws? So, like, as you will see in your political course, for those who follow the political thing, the PC can make legislation, as we said yesterday, but also the Senate and also the Imperials. Now, the difference in voting between PC and Senate is that the PC votes by single majority. Alright? So half plus 1, single majority. Senate votes by 2/3 majority. 2/3 of the Senate has to agree for a piece of legislation to be passed. And this is only a recent thing. Mark had it changed through an edict. It used to be the same. Now it's just like this. It's something you have to keep in mind when dealing with the Senate or with the PC. So everything that happens on the board that is proposed by senators needs to follow this schematic. A single majority for PC, 2/3 majority for the Senate. All right. So. Okay, this is just. I hate this system. I'm going to go over I'm going to go over a couple of important kinds of legislation with you. I should point out that you can find different kinds of legislation in this part of the Constitution, which I'm going to put right now in the classroom. There it is. Yeah, shut up. Also, excuse my nose. I have an allergy to the things that flowers create. This flower semen, basically. So yeah, I'm pretty messed up right now. But I'm still giving lessons. So, anyways, now that I have said this, oh yeah, no, something first. So we've talked about the senator and the senator's vote. Now, the senator's vote is really, really important. There is constitutional legislation on how a senator has to vote, and this has one simple reason. The Senate, even though it's not elected by the people, it represents the Roman Empire. It needs to take the interests of the entire Roman Empire at heart. So when a senator votes with stupid reasons like yes below, or when he votes by memeing, like for example, yes, I colored my hair today or something like that, well, that risks to fail the entire system, because I as a senator, like all of my other senators, they all represent the Roman Empire. And as soon as they do not read the legislation they vote on, do not create their own opinion anymore, there's no reason really to have them voting anything at all, because they become sheep that follow the flock. So that's the difference between a good senator and a bad senator. One that reads his legislation and actually cares about what he votes, and one that just does what everyone else does. However, you will see in PC as well as in Senate, there's two kinds of senators and PC members. The first kind is the military ones. In the Senate, that's more clear. They are going to go for praetorcy and consulcy. And then there's jobs that everyone can do. Censor, procurator, idealist C, that's for everyone. But when it comes to the more important magistracies, there's a very crucial diversion. So you have the difference between the civil senators, who are better at the civil side, and then there's the military senators, who are more involved in the military side, who have a leading experience with being legatus and stuff like that. And then you have those who are both, like Cinna, like DMAC. They can do anything they want basically, because they have all the experience for both sectors. Okay, I'm just going to blow my nose, and therefore I'm going to put my mic off to spare you of this horrific sound. Okay. Okay, those who will be watching the recording will have heard it in its full extent, but that's a privilege for you guys. You don't have to listen to it. Anyways, let's go on. Yes. Okay. So now that this is not my whiteboard. Okay. Now that we have cleared that up, we have gone over the hierarchy of legal norms yesterday. So as you remember, the emperor is the highest in the chain. Then there's the deputy, the magister equitum, and the deputy magister equitum. Then there's the senate. Then there's the consul and his magistrates. Then there's the PC. All right. I'm not going to go over that again, even though I just did. But let's just move on. All right. There is different kinds of legislation, and I'm just going to notice. I'm just going to put down the most important ones. All right. So basically, we have laws, so a lex and ordinatio. Alright, those are basically the same thing. There's a small difference in nuance, as where a lex can be enforced by UC, lex simplus for example, and an ordinatio is not really designed for such purposes. But basically it's the same thing. It's the difference between being a professional and not being a professional. If you know the difference, it's a slight thing. All right. So these, if you propose this to the Senate, you're proposing a new law. All right. But you also find them like this on the Senate, on the index of legislation, because that's basically what they are. And then there is motus. It's called a modus. Plural is moti. Okay, this is just like this. It has the same value in terms of legislative power. It creates also a legal rule, something we have to follow. But a modus is asking to do some one-time thing. It's not supposed to stay. It's just a modus is something you do one time, and then it can be classified. For example, a modus to have a Senate hearing. It is not done, but it's a good example. No one does that. You just DM the precaps, but it's a good example. A modus for a Senate hearing. You want, through the modus, that the Senate decide to have a Senate hearing on design day. That's a modus. After it has passed, there will be a Senate hearing, but the modus will stop existing. It will not get active. It will not be placed on the index of legislation as a rule that remains active. No, it will be classified, and its effect is a one-time thing that will treat into action right now. Whereas a lex ordinatio is something that the Senate rules upon. They decide it should happen, and then it will be posted on the index of legislation, and it will be there until someone changes it or removes it. That's the difference about between a lex and a modus. And then there is a referral. All right, a referral is basically changing a lex or an ordinatio. All right, that's what they call it. And then there's something most of you probably don't know. I'm saying this because we have a couple of PC members right here. It's called, I don't know if I will be able to write it in full, ad comodatio. An ad comodatio. Okay, now I should start with the beginning first. When you propose any of these to the Senate or to the PC, when you put them on the floor, you cannot change them anymore. That's a constitutional rule. Once you submit it, you cannot change it. Well, unless you get permission from the procurator. In that case, you will have to have it that no one has voted on it yet, because that's the exact reason that you cannot edit legislation that's on the floor, because people have expressed their opinion about the version that was on the floor at the moment you presented it. And if you're able to change that after people have already voted, well, then basically you can insert anything. So it's a logic reason. Well, the ad comodatio is basically some kind of modus to change a lex ordinatio or a referral while it is on the floor. But it can also change a modus. So an ad comodatio is actually a movement to change one of these while they are still being proposed. All right. I hope all that is clear. I cannot. If you have any questions, just let me know in the chat or something. Okay, now that we've cleared this out, we can move on to the executive branch. Well, we've seen what it is, but how does it operate? Our system is built as a system that distrusts the executive branch. What do I mean by that? Everything indicates that we do not trust the executive branch to execute their power on their own. The consul, for example, is the best example to illustrate this. The consul is controlled by the legislative branch. They elect him, they can execute him. They can overrule his veto, and that's about where it goes. The consul also cannot edit the constitution, but the Senate can. The legislative branch can edit the constitution while the consul cannot. Not on his own, with the Senate. Alright? So that's the basic. So that you have always to keep in mind. The executive branch only lives because the legislative branch is there to control it. That's the main purpose of the legislative branch, and that's keeping the executive branch in check. However, as I said yesterday, the consul has more power than he should have in the original concept of this system. But it works anyways because it's a Roblox roam and everything moves really fast. And yes, if we have it sets the gates open for sketchy actions by consuls, but it's not going to change anytime soon. So yes. And then as we saw, another clear example, as we saw yesterday, but yesterday we only scratched the surface, is UC. UC is an executive power. It's overseen by the Praetor Urbanus. But a good example of how these branches are intertwined are exactly UC and the Praetor Urbanus. Give me a second, I'm going to have to blow my nose again. Okay. About UC, yeah. The Praetor Urbanus has the power to help and manage the Judicial College. I don't know if you know that, but the Praetor U has the constitutional power to help here. The thing is, nowadays it's not done anymore unless the Praetor dies or something. Also, the last time something like this happened is when I was, I think, Cape Judex. The Praetor Urbanus Ixflus vetoed a judicial case out of the blue because the defendant was his friend. Yeah, and that's the last time any Praetor U ever vetoed a case, because I changed the constitution after that and the entire Senate voted for it. So yes, well done Xfil, but not really. Okay, anyways, that's enough about UC. Something more about the judicial. Yesterday we only had it superficial. What is the judicial? What does it do? It enforces the law. It criminalizes people. It has the prerogative to punish for breaking the law. It resolves conflicts between citizens, and it watches over the fundamental civilian rights. And we shall see that in the following lesson, which is all about those rights. I'm probably going to merge the following lesson with the one after that, because I do not have so much to say about civilian rights, because they're just there and they have a little bit of a tricky interpretation, but that's really it. So anyways, the judicial. The judicial makes sure that people follow the law. A clear example of the output of this system is, for example, what they do with recidivists. Recidivists are people that commit the same infraction multiple times. For example, a serial murder, or someone who, who falsely arrests people every week in Rome. That's a recidivist. And those people are sentenced harder every time they commit the same crime. Like, the judicial is going to look into their record, is going to find all the other murders, and is going to say to make a harsher decision every time they do it again, to discourage the breaking of the law. That's a good example of what the JC does. Now, the judicial branch is the only branch of the three that cannot create any kind of legislation. Only some president to fill up the loopholes and gaps in the legislation, but that's really it. They cannot create their own legislation. The executive branch, as well as the legislative branch, do create their own legislation. They create their own rules. All right. So therefore, the judicial legislation is really, really expanded. There is a lot of it. There is the biggest list on the index, because everything has to be regulated, everything has to be set out. The judicial needs to know what to do in every case, in every circumstance. But that also makes it the most evolving branch of the three. This branch has no power to make its own rules, so its rules are made for it. But as the praetor changes, as the praetor changes every term, so every 4 weeks. Yeah, I didn't mention that yet. Executive powers, magistrates, serve a term of 1 month. It's all regulated in the election law and on the index. Not really interesting, but yeah. So you can see the terms there. They run for 1 term and then they need to get re-elected and stuff like that. They can also no. I'm not going to expand on that. It's really not that interesting. So as I said, the judicial is the most quickly evolving entity of the 3. It is continually evolving. Partially because of me. What I meant by that is that personally the Judicial College gives me a lot of input for legislation. Like I'm in a trial, I'm presiding over a case, and I see I have to make an unfair judgment here because the law is like this. Like, oh yeah, something very important yet. The judge, and not this in your ears at judicials, it is something you have to know through your bones, alright? The judge applies the law. The judge does not what he thinks is right. That's the last thing he does. If every judge would do what they think was best, there would be no point in having a law. Alright? The judge executes the law as it is. The judge interprets and executes the law. So therefore it's also pointless. I have seen this in the past. Defendants, people who have attended my court, who are mad at me for bringing a certain verdict or a certain sentence. It is pointless to be mad at the judge because the judge only applies the law. They do what the law tells them to do, and if it's unfair, so be it. But that's their job, to interpret and execute the law. In some laws, they have a certain flexibility. They can entertain a certain point of view into their sentencing. But in most laws, you just have like murder. Did he murder him? Yes or no? In case yes, then it's so many days of criminalization, and that's it. As a judge, that's what you do. All right. So we will continue now. So as a judge, I have to make an unfair ruling, an unfair sentence. Well, it will give me the idea to change the law into something more specific so that I don't have to make the same thing again. That's something that like really boosts my entire political life. So yeah, there is that. That's basically it for today. We've got the 3 branches. I've now gone into depth about the 3, everything you need to know about them. The rest you will find out during your political career. Like, those are the things you really need to know. The rest is really all in the Constitution, and you will need all that occasionally. So you will have to look it up. So that's one thing I can advise you as a starting politician and judicial is read the legislation one at a time. I don't know. At least the Constitution, make work of that. Read the Constitution through at least once. Just know what is in there. Just read it attentionally just one time. The rest doesn't really matter. And right now, if you're going to become a judicial, I will ask you to do the same for the judicial legislation. Trust me, I have once. Like, when I mean legislation, I mean the things that do not apply to political institutions yet. And not, the governorships, don't worry about that. You will never need that unless you ever become governor and you have questions about if you have the regs. What I want you to write is the first 3 articles. So the Rome Constitution, the people of Rome, and then the, what is it called? Political institutions, and then imperium classifications and legislative classifications. That's all I want you to read. You don't have to, but it will certainly help you. It will. And then, of course, as soon as you join the plebeian council, you read all of this. You do, and as soon as you go into the Senate, you read through this at least once. One thing that you really have to know when you go into the Senate that may be interesting right now is senatorial magistrates. As an ignorant in the political field, this is of course interesting to know what a consul can and cannot do. For me, well, basically, before I go to war with one of the consuls, I read through this, like how far can I stretch certain motives or certain refer, oh, where can I threaten him, stuff like that. Not that I've really threatened the console, but you know what I mean. Like when you do something, you always have to make sure that you are aware of what you're doing, that you are well informed on the law, so that you come not so that you're not stuck with your dick in your hand when someone has to correct you on the law. That's really all about it for today. Next lesson we'll be going into I don't even, oh yeah, the political, the civil rights. That's where it really gets judicial. This has really been the legal system is really a basis of our Roman system. It's not really judicial. It's common to the political as well as the judicial. All right. See you next time then, I guess. If you have any questions, just stick around. I'll be here for another, I don't know, a few minutes, perhaps hours. All right. What the fuck? Is something wrong with my output? I feel like something. Wait, give me a second. Try again. Oh yes, that's much better. I had some trouble with my headphones. Oh, I should stop my recording.